For everybody. Molly. And Bill? And Bill. No, okay.
It's kind of hard to describe a week like we've had this week. Maybe the second longest week I've had since my weeks at York County Prison, except for one big difference, and that has been having these evenings and the presence outside the courthouse, which has, just I think kept us all alive and kept us in a spirit that we could carry, at least to some extent, into that courtroom. It's been a week of contrasts. And maybe I have a couple quotes from the judge today that will give you some sense, because what we've been doing all week is trying to break through a process that has been hard to describe, hard to anticipate, every morning you go in there and don't know exactly what kind of process of jury selection is going to be for the day, and then you go in after lunch and you don't know what you're going to face then. And so I think we're just very, very happy that we're near the end of this process, and even happier yet that I think despite all the efforts to silence us, to the point where we've been told over and over again that we have to submit every question in writing, and having to go through a process of resisting that and remaining human in that process and trying to hold one's temper. I didn't quite make it yesterday. I told the judge that this court is irrelevant, and that was really after he had said that our trying to discuss the question of nuclear war was irrelevant. It just became absolutely impossible. So the contrast with the judge, one quote, "I, the judge, am the exclusive source of the law. Will you take the law from the judge?" That was asking jurors to forget that they are the conscience of the community, asking jurors to forget our entire democratic history of tradition, which at least in theory has said that jurors are supposed to judge on the basis of their conscience. The judge is arguing their conscience comes from the law, and we see it very differently, and I think all of you folks, help us in insisting on that by encouraging us to go back in there over and over and over again and say those kinds of things. The other hopeful sign, I think, that's come out of this week, and we don't know, again, whether to anticipate next week will be in accordance with what the judge says this week, because it's been such a mixed kind of a thing, but he did say today you will be able to introduce whatever you want to in terms of your faith and belief once the trial starts. And that is our biggest hope, is that next week, once we finish off this jury selection process, which seems to be finally coming to an end, we'll have some things to do Monday morning to perhaps name some additional jurors and go through the peremptory challenge process. The reason for asking for the judge wants to ask for additional jurors is that we have succeeded in getting him to agree that he would ask the panel of jurors, once they're all assembled, questions about their attitudes on the pouring of blood, so that that we won't be confronted, perhaps, with too many jurors who will be completely turned off by that aspect of the action. I just find myself at a loss to describe that scene in there, day after day after day. Anne's, been wonderful in continuing to remind us of the need to keep our spirit in there and our spirit of prayer. And it's been a very, very difficult process. But again, I think the experience of walking into the courthouse every day with people who have been so faithfully bannering and putting flowers on our lapels again and taking the flag that they've taken this week, and all the work that's gone on in terms of putting this festival together, and all the faithful people who have come and shared with us and given us such a sense. I think that makes it possible to think of next week with some measure of hope, some measure that what we want to do is get some truth into the courtroom, some notion of what we are all about the reality of the nuclear threat, and insist that that is not an irrelevance, about the reality of the conscience of jurors, and insist that that is not irrelevant, and about the reality of the need for people to act based on that conscience, both as jurors and as citizens. And I think the fact that what we're trying to say in there is that, we're simply acting as responsible citizens. And the responsibility of citizens, despite what the judges said about international law being irrelevant in Pennsylvania, is that the responsibility of citizens is to recognize that we're not going to be silent witnesses to the new equivalent of Hitler's gas ovens. We're not going to let those things be built. And, we're not going to do that alone, but that's where you all come in. So again, I just want to thank all of you. I think my husband was too nervous last night to introduce my daughter. I'd like to ask Linda if she'd come up, if she's around here. Come on, Linda Jean McClellan. We're going to be grandparents in June, and it happens to be just a few weeks, more than 9 months after September 9th. So I think this is something we all will be celebrating together is new life. Dean Hammer's going to come up and maybe have some additional thoughts and perhaps answer some questions.